Hello, this is the fifth episode of the Mobuku Chronicles, and as you can see, I'm in a different part of the house than I was the last 4 times, because I now have my own room where I can do my work and my play. Don't forget that. And today is Sunday the June the 19th of the year 2011 AD, and I'm trying to have some background music while I do this, and this is my theme music. It's the First Symphony of Bruckner. Now I'm going to take a little, shall we say, pick up another thread than I was doing at the last episode for the beginning of the 5th episode. And this is to go back to the statements I've made in the different previous episodes where I've said that what we are witnessing and participating in is the smashing to pieces of the nation state. And actually that's a statement from Rudolf Steiner. That's where I first saw that statement. And by the way, to give credit where credit is due, the phrase economic and spiritual warfare has been declared against the human race, that I first saw from Catherine Austin Fitz, and she's a fine lady, and she has a website called Solaris, so you can go and check her out there. And I said also this was necessarily the case, that the nation state was smashing itself to pieces. And the reason this is the case is because the nation state is over with. It had its legitimate reasons for existing, but those days are over, and we need a completely different form of social, or shall we say, a different social arrangement that we have today. And what is going on, all the symptoms that are going on in the world, what those global European Anticipation Bulletin so aptly described as the year of ruthlessness, these are all necessary changes that need to take place in order for this new social arrangement, which I will describe later, needs to arise consciously. So with that in mind, I wanted to give 4 quotations from different sources that I frequent on a fairly regular basis on the internet. And the first one comes from The Privateer, a website called The Privateers, put out by a man named Bill Buckler, and he resides in Australia. And this is what he had to say. This is apropos the nation state smashing itself to pieces, which we are witnessing to and participating in and are surrounded by every day. The proportions in the nations change, but the question remains the same. We here at The Privateer have raised this question before in relation to the United States, and we will probably raise it again. How did the U.S. government govern, in quotations, a nation of 92 million people with an annual budget of $0.7 billion, 0.7, and a total funded and unfunded debt of $2.7 billion 100 years ago, which was of course before the founding of the Federal Reserve? The answer is very simple. For the most part, they did not. And because they did not, in other words, they left people to their own devices to make up their own lives the way they felt they should make them up, without the interference of government. And because they did not, they didn't indulge in economic make-believe. They had no income tax. Yeah, the income tax wasn't in existence, personal income tax, to fund them, and no central bank to print more money, if necessary. Today, the U.S. government governs, quote-unquote, 310 billion people, with an annual budget of nearly 4 trillion, and a total funded and unfunded debt approaching 100 trillion US dollars. In other words, it takes about 5,400 times as many dollars and about 37,000 times more debt to govern, quote-unquote, about 3.35 times as many people as it did a century ago. Why? The answer is equally simple. Today, the U.S. government governs everything. At least it has pretensions to or aspirations to. It is all-pervasive. It has taken over the economy from its people. That is a fact. At the same time, the present government reassures the governed that the cost involved is not theirs to bear, but can be perpetually shifted to future generations if only they will continue to go along with economic make-believe. Officially, this is known as the full faith and credit, in quotes, of the U.S. government. As for what the future holds for the United States. Now, the United States of America is not the same as America. I pointed that out before. It is a very egregious error to confuse the government with the country. They're not the same entity at all. So what the future holds in store for the United States of America, look no further than the outcome of every single attempt in past history to enact fully centrally planned government in the history of the world. Okay, that's from Bill Buck of The Privateer. The next one comes from Jim Willey, and Jim Willey puts out a newsletter called The Hat Trick Letter, and it's available from his website, The Golden Jackass, which is a fairy tale. The Golden Jackass is a fairy tale about the Golden Jackass. And it's a private newsletter. It's about $18 a month, and it's worth 200 times that for the information that's in there. And I've been subscribing to it since the inception in 2004. And this man is reliable, he's cogent, he's honest, and he's very straightforward. And his analysis is spot on, and has been since the time I've been reading his material. So I highly recommend you subscribe. This is what he has to say in his latest issue. The fascist business model has climaxed with profound fraud, broad, powerful insolvency, and economic deterioration laced with strong price inflation marred by global revolt and the inexorable march towards systemic failure to culminate in the default of the U.S. government debt. Nothing is remotely being fixed. The multi-trillion financial fraud crimes will continue to go unpunished, unprosecuted, and even proliferate. The bond counterfeit continues unabated. The naked United States Treasury bond sales continued unabated. The front-running of the plunge protection team activity continues unabated. The U.S. government monetary policy supports continues to include regular raids on hedge funds directed by the Wall Street-made men, designed to aid the U.S. dollar, to encourage U.S. dollar Treasury bond demand, and to thwart commodity investment. the Wall Street criminal bankers control the national government, its banks, its finance ministry, its military wing, the news networks, and the law enforcement. Hope is in short supply, unless tethered tightly to the chains of gold and wrapped in cables of silver. That's what he has to say. Okay, now this next one comes from a blog, a website called Deep Capture, deepcapture.com. I highly recommend you go and check it out, because it's an ongoing blow-by-blow account of a financial fraud taking place in the United States. According to Wright, and Wright the man, he was a former special agent of the FBI, and he resigned. His team's efforts were foiled, and this is the reason he resigned. His team efforts were foiled by the U.S. politicians and FBI higher-ups who were unnerved by the fact that he was investigating powerful people who had considerable influence in both Washington and Saudi Arabia, ostensibly a key U.S. ally. Former Special Agent Wright said in essence that the U.S. Department of Justice had been captured by Al-Qaeda's most important financiers. This regulatory capture, and what regulatory capture means is that all the regulatory agencies, the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, the FDA, the DEA, the Department of Justice, the FBI, all these people, all these institutions have been infiltrated and taken over by criminal organized crime syndicates of one kind or another. That's what regulatory capture means. You know, it's like a quaint phrase that really doesn't illustrate what the profound toxicity that's in this government. The capture apparently extends to the SEC, of which there is no doubt, which has shown no signs of investigating the trading of people like the billionaires who comprise Al-Qaeda's golden chain and who funded the SAAR network. And you have to read Deep Capture to find out what those are. In fact, in the view of Deep Capture, the capture of the SEC by criminal financial operators is essentially total, unlike the DOJ, and it's probably getting there anyway. In the DOJ, I mean the Department of Justice, such as it is. The message is this: some regulators and law enforcement officials overseeing our nation's capital markets have been captured by destructive financial criminals with ties to Al-Qaeda, to mention just one of the ties these criminals, these crime syndicates have. Alright, the last one comes from a man called Mike Krieger. I don't know his website. This one, I found this one on Zero Hedge, which is a site I recommend you check out every day. And this is what he has to say, Mike Krieger has to say. While I spend a lot of time highlighting the powers that be's plan to form a world government, a world currency, and central bank, that doesn't mean I think they will succeed. In fact, just as Wall Street played their hand too aggressively after being bailed out, and are now going down for the count this time round, you know, which is unfolding over the next couple of years, the powers that be have also played their hand way too aggressively, and not only will their dream of planetary control through a global fiat money system run by them completely fail, but their policies will fail so spectacularly and publicly that will lead to what I call peak government. Government's right at this moment are as big as they will ever be in our lifetimes. Well, I certainly hope he's right about that. This is, in my opinion, a great thing for humanity, and on which the point I totally agree. And freedom.